When most instructional designers learn about models like ADDIE, we usually learn them in the context of classrooms, corporate training programs, or online learning. But apprenticeship programs operate a little bit differently. The goal isn't simply to deliver information. The goal really is to develop someone who can perform a job safely, competently, and independently. That raises an interesting question. Can traditional instructional design models like ADDIE still work in apprenticeship and workforce development environments? The answer is yes, of course, but only if we start in the right place. So today, Chuck and I are going to be talking about the analysis phase because it becomes especially important in workforce learning, how job task analysis fits in the process, and why performance objectives matter more than content objectives when you're preparing people to do the real work. Chuck, one of the things that I hear fairly often is that apprenticeship programs are different. People assume that instructional design models like ADDIE don't really apply because so much of the learning happens on the job site. So what's your reaction when you hear that?
After my laughter. Okay, let's think about this for a second. Everything in instructional design and learning design came from the building trades, came from apprenticeship. It's the longest known, goes back farther than any other kind of learning, unless you're going to talk about doing things in caves and, mumbling that there goes the dinner. We need to do something about that. So come on. This goes back to the problem we always have as instructional designers is trying to explain what we do to people that have no knowledge of this. They hear ADDIE and whatever, and they automatically assume they know what that means. And this is another place to interject, Denise, the fact that all these models are not what we do with work plans. It's not how we do things. This is just a way we think about what we do. It's theoretical learning design as opposed to actual practical learning design. It's just like physics or anything else. You have applied physicists, you have theoretical physicists. We deal with theoretical learning design so that we can evolve our own practices and workflow and the way that we do things. ADDIE is a great example. Great model, goes back to Gandhi and Briggs and that family at Florida State. Great stuff. But people confuse that with how we actually do things. We may incorporate those 5 things, and usually do, but not in that order. And each one of them has a different percentage of usage for each project. So again, one of the biggest things we do as instructional designers, especially in the beginning, working with new folks, is we have to explain to them what we are and what we do and what it's based on. And you cannot give them too much information.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And I think sometimes people forget why ADDIE even exists in the first place. We often think about it as this course development process, but it was really designed to help solve performance problems. Can you talk a little bit about what ADDIE was originally trying to accomplish?
Well, ADDIE, like most of the models that evolved 50s, 60s, 70s, they were all based on the work of Robert Gagne and others. And this is World War II stuff. This is training hundreds of thousands of people efficiently and effectively. And to do that, you got to dig into cognitive science. You got to dig into systems. You got to dig into a lot of things. And they put together ADDIE and different models to show, okay, this is what we're saying when we say we're doing these things. So ADDIE is a theoretical model. And it's a great one, and it's one that everybody refers to. But we have to be very clear what it is. It's a model. So yes, we do analysis. Yes, we do design, development, implementation, and evaluation. We should try to do all those things when we design something, whether it's a small project for a group of 15 in a community group, or whether you're going to do 3 million people like I did in Egypt. It's all the same stuff. And if you think about it, it's pretty hard for people to differentiate what's going on. So do they really need to understand ADDIE? No. Do we need to explain to them that it's just a foundational piece that we use to build a very specific answer to your very particular problems? And I've found that going to the theoretical physicist as opposed to the applied physicist. Okay, theoretical, the Einsteins versus the people using telescopes. I mean, they're two different worlds, and they're both very important and both, same group of brilliant people, but they do different things. And that's what we do. We take these incredible models and we build from them. And is our work based in things that are 40, 50 years old in some ways? But so what? I mean, cognitive science hasn't evolved that much during these times. People still learn the same way. And we still need to move things from short-term to long-term memory. That's what learning is about. We can spend, our entire careers talking about cognitive science, or we can go out and design projects. I prefer to go out and design projects based on the incredible work that others have done.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we build anything in apprenticeship programs, workforce development, we have to understand what the worker actually needs to be able to do on the job. And that's one of the big lessons I learned when I started teaching at the International Masonry Institute's instructor certification program. Is when I first started teaching, the first class was something in my wheelhouse. It was video production, so they could get their portfolios in place. And part of that portfolio piece was putting together a video to demonstrate their ability to be able to be an instructor. And it was hard for me at first, I'm going to be honest, because I didn't understand what the student, I should say, actually had to do this video for. What was the importance of it? Was if it was something they were doing on the job? Was it for something for the portfolio? So because I didn't at that point, my very green step into the instructional design world at that point. I was a grad student in the program, in instructional design program. So I was very green, and I didn't really know what kind of questions to ask those folks who I needed to be asking questions, like what exactly am I going to be doing? What exactly do they need to be doing? So what do you say to somebody who is in a position like that, where they're green and they're just thrown into, so let's put this class together, and maybe they have never done an analysis. They've never worked in the ADDIE theory before. What's the first step they should take?
Well, and this is very true, not only in apprenticeship, but in a lot of fields. If you look at apprenticeship, most of the people that teach apprenticeship have no instructional design experience, may have no teaching experience. What they are generally is the best worker on the job. These are the people that everyone else looks up to because they're very good at what they do. It doesn't mean they're very good at sharing it with other people. And one thing that the trades learned very early, the trades that really cared about all this, like the Masonry Institute, the bricklayers, the painters, carpenters, all of them did eventually. What they really focused on was, okay, let me think about this for a second. We can take all this incredible courseware, but if you can't teach it, what have we really got? So this is when we started this whole revolution, which was these instructor certification programs. IMI, the Masonry Institute, is top of the book. They're the best. I've worked with all of them. They're all good. I just happen to care more for IMI and ICP because that was my home for a while. So I'm a little prejudiced. But the whole notion is this leap that we have to make. And you can design incredible courses, and we do. All the apprenticeship programs are incredibly well designed now. These are professionals. These are PhD level designers running these. So this is all done very well. But that missing piece of transferring this so that it could be taught is where they really picked it up. So I think when people think about apprenticeship, they don't think about this whole thing that's going on behind the curtain. And this whole thing is, we need to train the best people on the job to be the best instructors in apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And that's the real leap that we've seen in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and that needs to translate or transfer, like you said, into the actual workforce. I've facilitated some instructor certification type courses before, not for IMI, but for a different organization, where I was handed the information to facilitate. I didn't develop it myself. And some of these programs that I've worked in, I found were a little maybe too theoretical based for what they're actually going to be transferring out into the workforce. So I felt like there was a fine balance between us as instructional designers, knowing the theory, knowing these theoretical models, because we know how important they are in designing and delivering content. But there's also a balance of making it a practical applied product or learning product at the end for the end user, so they can then take that information and go apply it in the real world.
Well, one thing I did when I did mass, large-scale apprenticeship programs, in one program I designed almost 300 courses. We had, on any given day, 8, 9, 10 instructional designers working on it. We had groups, 50, 60, 70 subject matter people. We bring them into an auditorium and we put together courses. And one sign I had put up within each group is, if they don't use it the next day, don't put it in the apprenticeship. And I got some real pushback in the beginning. And I said, no, we're not going to waste any time. If they can't use it on the job, why are we teaching it to them? Now, there's mandated stuff like OSHA training and, all the rest of it. Yeah, we'll do that. That's fine. They may not ever use that, but we're mandated to do that. But inside the trades themselves, if they can't use it on the job the next day, or if it doesn't build the scaffolding for them of knowledge that they'll use within the trade, then why are we wasting their time?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest lessons you taught me, Chuck, is, when you handed the reins over to me to be the person who's developing and facilitating the curriculum for the IMI program, one of the things that every time I would sit down to develop and put my own twist on, because you told me to put my own twist on things, to put my own twist on the development of these courses, I always heard you in my ear going, don't waste their time. Don't waste their time. And I carry that with me. And I carry it with me to the learners in these programs too, because I give the same advice to them that you gave to me. And so that advice is carried forward to the end user, the learners in these programs, that no matter what we're doing, we don't want to be wasting their time. And from my own point of view, I know that when I develop a course, I facilitate it, and it's always a work in progress. So I've been doing this now for 5 years with IMI, and I keep redeveloping and enriching each year based on my observation as a facilitator and instructor, and also feedback that I get, because I always ask for the feedback. And each time, each iteration becomes stronger and stronger. And I still hear you saying over my shoulder, don't waste their time, don't waste their time. So thank you for that.
Well, a lot of this I learned before I ever knew what instructional design was, because I was subjected to some really lousy training that I'm not even going to say where, because it doesn't matter. But I was also subjected to some really incredibly good training. So when I went to the police academy, I graduated knowing how to be a law enforcement officer, because almost every second in the academy this is what you have to do. This is what you will face. These are the things that are going to happen to you. These are the things you're going to have to do that you're not going to want to do. There's going to be all these people that don't like you, and they will call you lots of different things. And every minute in the academy was something that I used later on the street. And that taught me a lesson before I even knew it was a lesson. That taught me, from my experience, what my expectations would be later if I'm designing something for an apprentice. What does an apprentice need today? What does an apprentice need tomorrow? And then I got it drilled into me by Dr. Cook. And he would say all the time to me, Chuck, if they can't use it tomorrow, why are you wasting their time? Because if you think about it, how much of our education do we use? How much of your high school education did you use? How much of my 12 years of college do I actually use? Right? Because you have mandated courses, you've got take so many hours for this or that. You have to pass this comp. You have to write this dissertation. You have to do all this stuff that's mandated. You have no choice about it. But during that whole time, what do I remember? I remember Dr. Cook sitting me down and telling me, Chuck, this is what you need to do. Right? It was all about mentorship. It was all about these other things. And yeah, I took some great courses from incredibly brilliant people. And I learned a lot, but I didn't learn a lot that I used. And when you're talking about apprenticeship, we work with our hands in apprenticeship. We go out in the job and we use our hands. We use our brain and we use all these other things. But what it comes down to is that's the stuff that we really need to focus on, is what are they going to do tomorrow and what can get them hurt and what can make them less than the most proficient that they could be. And it's not about reading a book about bricklaying. It's about laying bricks. And the more you think about that, Dr. Cook was right. If I've instilled it in you, then that's terrific. But that's what I've always tried to teach. And that's what I write in my books. Don't waste a second of somebody's time. If it's mandated, you got to live with it, do the best you can. But the stuff that applies to the field, that applies to what they're going to be doing professionally, don't waste a second of their time.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for kind of tuning into this conversation that we had about really, to me, the crux of it is understanding your learner. Who are they? What do they need to be able to do on the job tomorrow? And so that should be your biggest takeaway from this video, is always ask yourself, what do they need to do tomorrow? And can they do it tomorrow after they've taken this class, this course? So thanks for sticking with us, and thanks for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.